Hello everybody and welcome to a video about Dwarf Fortress. In this video we are going to be talking about traps. Just the basics of traps, nothing too extremely fancy. I'm going to be going through the 5 different types of traps in the game, explaining what they do, and giving you some ideas on how to use them. We're not going to be getting into the super fancy Rube Goldberg machines of death today. We're just going to be sticking to the fundamentals. So, what kind of traps exist in Dwarf Fortress? Well, in order to build them and find out, you're going to need 2 workshops at the very least. You're going to need a mechanics workshop, and you're going to need to make rock mechanisms. We're just going to get those going on repeat for this video. The second thing that we're going to need is a carpenter shop, and we're going to need at least 1 cage. So I will make a cage. Now, what we're going to be doing is we are going to be, like I said, building every single one of those traps. So once we have a couple of mechanisms, we'll get right into it. So as you can see, now we have a mechanism, so we can get started with the video. The first trap that we're going to be looking at today is a upright weapon and spike trap. Now this one is kind of an interesting one. All right, so now you can see that we have 1 mechanism and a second one being worked on. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at the first trap of the day, which is going to be the Stonefall trap. The Stonefall trap is a very basic trap. It is essentially just a distraction mechanism, if nothing else. It is a place where a stone or a boulder is hoisted up above this little plate on the ground and then hung from the ceiling. Now, they look kind of silly when placed above ground and are best used kind of either in a tunnel or a long walkway with a space on either side like this. So what these are good for isn't killing the foe. It's not really going to hurt something, these Stonefall traps. They only have 1 shot, they only get used once, and it hasn't even been loaded yet. It's waiting for a boulder. They only have 1 shot and only get used once, and once they've fired off, they're done. And they're not very good at killing things because it's just a boulder, and most creatures will be able to dodge out of the way of them. But what they're very good at is they're very good at making things dodge off of ledges because, oh no, there's a stone coming. Oh God, gotta jump out of the way. And they fall down into the ledge here. Now, this is just kind of a trench that I dug as an example. But what I would recommend doing with these is simply forcing them off of a high ledge or into a volcano or into an ocean or into a big old thing of water that you've filled up. Maybe into your moat, or alternatively, just onto a pile of spikes. Whatever works for you. I think that Stonefall traps can be quite effective if correctly utilized. In tight hallways, when there's nowhere to dodge, you can make them dodge into other Stonefall traps, and then they'll actually take damage on the second one. But just remember that they're only single fire, they have to be reloaded, and they're not super good at killing things, but can be utilized in multiple ways. The second trap we're going to be having a peek at here is the cage trap. Now, this is probably the one that you'll use the most in Dwarf Fortress. A cage trap is possibly one of the most overpowered weapons in the game, and also a very useful tool for animal husbandry. These are the traps that you're going to be using to catch any wild animals out in the wilds. They're also the trap that you're going to be using to stop major threats. Fun fact, a dragon can be caught in a tiny little wooden box in a cage trap. So can a giant. So can an Etten, and apparently there's a bug in the game right now that might be fixed by the time you see this video that they can catch were creatures. They're not supposed to be able to. There's some weird bugs surrounding cage traps and spider webs as well, so if you put them in the cavern layers, you may occasionally see your own dwarves stuck in them, so be a little bit careful. But what I will say is if a spider web gets caught on one, anything can be caught in it. This includes forgotten beasts, this includes any kind of crazy critters. So if there's a lot of cobwebs around, maybe disable auto-seeking webs and let something more interesting be caught in one of these. They're very good for catching invaders, and invaders that are caught in them that have armor on them can have their armor removed by using the garbage dump function in this, by using a garbage dump zone. If you make a garbage dump zone, and then you go into the stock screen and find their armor in the stock screen, you can also remove their armor. Just a few tips about cage traps. Of course, once a creature that is evil, like let's just say a bronze colossus, is in a cage trap, you can then connect it to a lever using 2 more additional mechanisms and use it to fight off sieges like I have been in one of my recent fortresses. Cages are very, very utilizable and very, very useful. Definitely abuse them as much as you can. The next trap we're going to be talking about here is a repeated weapon trap. Now, for this one, I'm going to be placing it after the Stonefall trap. Now, a weapon trap is maybe the most basic and easy to understand. A weapon trap, when placed, gives you up to 10 weapons that you can place in it. For this one, we're just going to place a single battle axe. Now, weapon traps are repeated weapon spinning, essentially. They come up and down and attack anything. They're kind of like a trap from an Indiana Jones film. In this case, it'll be an axe going whap when a thing walks over top of it. It won't hurt your own dwarves, of course, but any enemy entity that walks across this trap will get a nasty cut, potentially. However, keep in mind, if they hit too many things, they may jam, which means they will stop functioning and the weapons will all fly out of them. My personal favorite is serrated glass discs for these, or serrated metal discs, as they have a tendency to turn enemies into Swiss cheese, but just keep in mind they can jam, and they will jam in major fighting situations. So if you're going to use weapon traps, be sure to use a lot of them, and definitely fill them up with as many weapons as you can. This is very much a tutorial fortress, so I don't have a lot of weapons at my disposal, but I'll just leave it at that. Make sure to use them as much as you can with as many weapons as possible. For the next trap we're making here, we're also going to open up the carpenter shop again, and we're going to be making menacing wooden spikes. Now keep in mind, these can also be constructed out of metal for menacing metal spikes, and are a very effective method of impaling things. You can just simply place them on their own, or you can use them alongside of the trap that we're going to be talking about now, which is upright weapon and spikes. Now, upright weapon and spikes look like kind of a bunch of holes in the ground, right? They're just kind of a small collection. Well, I need spikes. Can you finish making the spikes? There we go. Now, if I can continue with this, upright spikes. Now, upright spikes are, again, they give you up 1 to 10 that you can place in them. Now, these upright spikes are a little bit interesting. There's a few different ways that you can use them. The first of which I'm going to show you using a lever. Now, upright spikes by themselves are kind of a retracted spike, but you can connect them to levers. And once a lever is linked to them, if you pull the lever, they will stab. They will pop out, and then you push the lever forward, and they go back in. So if I tell the dwarves to pull this lever, and we look at this upright menacing spike, see, it goes down. Then pull it again, and it pops up. And when it's in the up position, if you were to drop something onto it, it would get impaled by it. And then when it goes down, it retracts. So you could very much just fill a whole hallway up with these and then connect them all to one lever and just tell a dwarf to pull it. Or you could use the next trap we're about to talk about. Now, the next trap is kind of sneaky. This is a pressure plate. This is one of the more confusing ones initially. It's got a bunch of options here. Water does not trigger by default, magma does not trigger, minecarts do not trigger, and creatures do not trigger. Someone on my Discord was actually talking about how minecarts don't trigger or can't be placed on minecart tracks. Yes, but minecarts that are going real fast will keep going even if the track ends. So if you want to use minecarts to trigger one of these, just make sure you end the track, place the switch, the pressure plate, and then continue the track afterwards. As the minecart's going fast enough, it'll just keep going. But we can also set these to reset automatically or be single use only. Now, if we want creatures to trigger it, which is what I usually use these for, we can set it so that all sizes of creatures, only a specific type of creature, or anything of any size triggers. We can go all the way up to the biggest possible creatures that this world has, and then we can set it whether or not citizens trigger. So I'm not going to set it so citizens trigger for this just because I don't want to hurt somebody, but what I will say is have a peek at this. So once this pressure plate gets placed, there's a lot of things we can do with these. They work just like levers do. We can connect them to drawbridges. We can connect them to doors. We can connect them to trapdoors. We can connect them to these upright spikes. The exact same way levers work. Pressure plates are something I should use more, frankly. I'm not very good at using them. I have a habit of not using them, but I should use them because the potential for those are awesome. So, real quick rehash. Pressure plates work as levers do and have the potential for mass destruction and many, many casualties. Stonefall traps. Good for making things dodge, not very good for killing. Weapon traps. Very effective with the right weapons in them, but have a tendency to jam and break. Cage traps. very overpowered and should be abused. Upright spikes, good for impaling, good for repeated impaling, also can jam, similar to weapon traps. I hope that you found this video helpful, or at the very least useful. And if you want to see more tutorials like this about Dwarf Fortress, you can go to this YouTube channel where I've got a whole ton of them now. And if you want to see me while I play video games on the internet, you can go to twitch.tv/BLINDIRL, where you can see my face while I play a lot of Dwarf Fortress. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays are guaranteed streams and optional streams over the weekends. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.